There may not be a team with a more fascinating decision to make in this offseason than the New York Rangers. Just a few years removed from being the best team in the Eastern Conference and a breath away from making it to the Stanley Cup Finals, the Rangers have tumbled over the last 2 years, shedding talent, losing coaches, and morphing into something unrecognizable, a mediocre to bad team. And while they still have a lot of talent on that roster, in particular in positions of need, this offseason might prove to be the one that defines the Rangers for the next decade, whether they decide to push all their chips in again and go for it with the talent on their roster, or whether they're going to commit to the proper rebuild. So let's see what the New York Rangers should do in this offseason in the latest Fix Your franchise. As always, we're starting with the people in charge of this team, namely the GM and coach. GM remains Chris Drury. Somehow, despite all the controversy, despite all of the questionable moves, the underwhelming returns on players that he shipped out last year, he returns as the man running the show and coaching the team, Mike Sullivan, in his second year with the Rangers, which was disappointing. That's not controversial to say, but considering his success with the Pittsburgh Penguins over a half a decade and the fact that he just took Team USA to their first gold medal in 40 years, I'm confident in saying that if there was one guy that I would not be looking to move off of too quickly, it would be Sully. Chris Drury, on the other hand, as I alluded to, it is unfathomable that this man is still the GM of the New York Rangers, and he might be feeling a lot of heat under his seat, which in my opinion is going to color his strategy for the team this offseason. Looking at how the Rangers ended the 25-26 season, they had a roster that was pretty much what they would have wanted going in, minus the guys that they traded away, most notable of those, of course, being Artemi Panarin. They're a team with, surprisingly, a decent amount of cap space this offseason and not too many big names that need to be re-signed, so they actually do have a fair bit of wiggle room as to what they could do this offseason, and they're also not completely bereft of draft capital. Indeed, they nabbed a second to first round pick this year in the Artemi Panarin trade. They have 4 third round picks and have just about all of their top 3 round picks for the next 3 years as well. So they have some assets to maneuver with. Now, what they are severely lacking, on the other hand, is quality young players and quality prospects. The one notable exception to this is Gabe Perreault, a guy who was drafted at the end of the first round and has developed into being one of the top prospects in the NHL. He had a decently impressive debut as a 20-year-old for the Rangers, putting up 27 points in 49 games, and it's expected that he's going to continue to develop and get a bigger role with the Rangers this year. And when you look at the talent the Rangers have on their roster right now, they actually have a lot of the pieces that you would need if you were trying to build a contender right now. JT Miller may be on the wrong side of his aging curve, but he's still a top-line center in the NHL, though not exactly an elite one. Alexis Lafreniere, for all the flack that he's taken, can be a top 6 forward and produce decently, because Zibanejad is absolutely the epitome of what you'd want from a number 2C. Vincent Trocheck can even be a top 6 guy if you need him to be, although if you want to have incredible depth down the middle, perfectly fine to have him as your third center. On the back end, you're also pretty well set. Adam Fox is a top 10 number 1 defenseman in my opinion. He's become a bit underrated even. Yes, he's had some down years, but he's still an incredibly effective puck-moving defenseman. And their big acquisition from the last offseason, Vlad Gavrikov, is not only a perfect number 2 defenseman, the perfect complement to Adam Fox, a defensive shutdown player who can cover for Fox when he takes chances offensively. And then in goal, of course, the Rangers are set. Igor Shesterkin is not just a bona fide starting goaltender for a Stanley Cup contending team. He's one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, at least in the top 5 in my opinion, on a bad year. And the fact that he's shown that he can shoulder the lion's share of the starts, being like a 50 to 60 start guy, means that you don't have to over-index into your backup goaltender. You can go with Jonathan Quick over the last few years, and now that he's retired, it's probably going to be the young Dylan Garand taking his place. So you might be asking, what's the decision that they have to make? Because they have so many of these pieces that they need to be a top-flight team and be a contender in the East again. Why not just go out and get a number 1 winger or a top 4 defenseman, and then you're back to contending status again? Well, in part, it's because particularly number 1 wing is just not a position that's readily available, and even if it was, see Jason Robertson. The Red Wings don't quite have the cap space or the draft assets to be able to pull that off comfortably. They certainly could, but it would wipe out all of their remaining cap space and their draft assets for the next 3 years. And then second is again looking at the aging curves of a lot of these guys. JT Miller is on the wrong side of 33. Mika Zibanejad, same. Vinny Trocheck, 32. Vlad Gavrikov is 30. Igor Shesterkin, also 30. And while you do have some younger pieces like Adam Fox at 28 and Lafreniere at 24, and I'm going to throw in Gabe Perreault at age 21 because I think he's going to develop into a top 6 winger this year, most of these core pieces are moving out of their prime right now. If Drury and the Red Wings do decide to add, they're basically saying these next 2 to 3 years are it. After this, it's going to be a completely steep decline. And given the fact that they just wasted 2 of the years where a lot of these guys were younger into their primes, it might be a more prudent decision to say, well, it hasn't worked. It's probably not going to get much better. Even if we add another top 4 defenseman, it's better to just reset right now. And that is, for the record, what I would probably do if I was GM of the New York Rangers. I mentioned this in the San Jose Sharks video, but this would be the perfect opportunity to trade a guy like Adam Fox, who's locked up for a few more years and could net you another top 10 pick, moving up to number 2 overall, where you would get a franchise cornerstone player like Ivar Stenberg or Chase Reed if you want to go and get the best defenseman in the NHL draft. I'm assuming McKenna goes 1, and if he doesn't, then holy shit, you just jump on that. For most of these other guys, the Zibanejads, the Millers, yeah, you can trade them away at some point, but you're probably trading them away to contending teams who are going to be picking much later in the draft. They'll probably want to hold off until next year at the deadline. And also, you might have to eat some cap space to get rid of those guys because they are locked into big contracts that, again, are going to take them into their mid to late 30s where teams aren't going to want to pay that much for a declining asset. In that scenario, you would just kind of trade as many assets other than guys like Lafreniere, Will Cooley, Gabe Perreault, obviously. On the back end, you'd keep guys like Drew Fortescue and Braden Schneider. And Igor Shesterkin, I think you could maybe look to see if there's a blockbuster available for him, but I don't know if that's going to materialize, so you could just hold on to him for now. And basically, you would just try and get this rebuild over as quickly as possible, supercharging it with hopefully a guy like Stenberg. But that's not what I think Chris Drury is going to do. I think Chris Drury is in a position where he kind of has to go for it because if the Rangers continue to slip, he's going to lose his job and be out on the street. And for the record, I don't necessarily think that that's a terrible decision for him to make. I think there's a good argument to be made that with a couple of tweaks, the Rangers should and could get back to being a decent team. So what would that look like? Well, it means basically you're not doing much. You're just kind of running it back with the crew that you had. You're hoping that Gabe Perreault develops into at least a top 6 winger. You're hoping that Lafreniere can somehow figure it out and become a number 1 winger. You're giving some run to guys like Liam Greentree, Adam Sikora, Noah Laba, and whoever it is you draft with your number 5 overall pick. Me personally, I like Keaton Vierhoff a lot, and he's who I have penciled in, but if the Rangers brass decides that it's Daxon Rudolph or Carson Karls or Albert Schmitz, whoever it is, he would be penciled into that top 4 position whenever he decides to make the jump over to the New York Rangers. And if you're thinking, well, that's not very exciting, the Rangers should be doing something at least in the trade market or free agency, I ask what exactly that would be. As I mentioned, there's not really a number 1 winger that's going to be available other than Jason Robertson, and I just don't think that they have the assets to make that happen, either via free agency or trade. Yeah, Alex Tuch is out there, but he's not really a number 1 winger. He's a second line winger, and you have 2 of those who are much younger and cheaper than Tuch will be on the open market. You don't need to go splurging in the John Carlson or Darren Radish pools because you already have a number 1 defenseman in Adam Fox. You don't need to over-index in there when you can get a guy in a lower tier of free agency if you wanted to secure that spot while Vierhoff, let's say, is still in school. Like, I guess maybe being in the Rasmus Anderson sweepstakes would help them, but that's not really a need. And if they add another veteran forward like a Giroux or a reunion with Kane or Tarasenko, what's that really doing? You're depriving your younger players of key minutes and letting them develop. And because there aren't really a lot of obvious paths that would make the Rangers significantly better than they were last year, that's why my inclination is that they should be looking to completely blow it up and start from scratch. But unfortunately, there's the human side to this, which is a GM who wants to keep his job and is going to do whatever it takes to stretch out that employment as long as he can. And if that means kicking the can down the road a few years for the New York Rangers, he's going to do that, even if it cripples them long term.